All around the world, different cultures from different periods of time have come up with the concept of a soul. The ancient Greeks called it pneuma, the Chinese called it qi, and other cultures have other names for it. Mana, Rua, Lung, and Manitou are just a few. In Western philosophy, the soul is defined as the vital spark, energy, or principle. Obviously something vital for life. According to the concept of vitalism, all living beings have within them this vital principle, and that is why they are alive. They may not share the same names, but cultures around the globe with little to no contact with one another have developed this ideology of the soul. But how did that happen? And why? And what can that tell us about humanity? For this segment, we'll be focusing on 3 cultural eras in human history: Greco-Roman culture, ancient Chinese philosophy, and the Enlightenment era. Though vitalism in all 3 of these cultures is astonishingly similar, it is important to first bring out their differences.
Now, in Greco-Roman mythology, the Titan Prometheus is responsible for bringing humanity to life. He sculpted man out of clay in the image of gods, and in most myths breathed life into these figures. There's actually up to debate about what actually brought humanity to life. Some claim it was actually Athena that did the breathing, not Prometheus. Sometimes it's the fire that Prometheus stole from Zeus. Sometimes it's even Ouranos' blood in the clay. Myths tend to get a little messy like that, but whatever it was, humanity as we know it sprang from this guy Prometheus, making us out of clay. Plus, some sort of extra element that could have only been the vital spark. Now, the other aspect of this, especially in Greco-Roman culture, would be philosophy, specifically ancient Greek philosophy. They even had a name for this vital spark. They called it pneuma, which literally translates to the breath of life. Now, the pneuma here isn't just found in humans. It's found everywhere, literally in everything, which is much closer to the actual scientific theories of today, if you think about it. There were 4 tiers of pneuma. The first tier held matter together. The second tier brought stuff like vegetation to life. The third was found in animals, and the fourth one was called the rational soul. Supposedly, it allowed humans to pass judgment and think logically, instead of just following base instincts. Obviously, even among the ancient philosophers, humans were seen as a sect apart from all these other beings.
Vitalism in Chinese philosophy is honestly such a fascinating topic. It's called qi. The Chinese character can actually mean anything from breath to vital energy to even anger. According to their philosophy, qi was sort of this energy force that flowed through everything in the world, and understanding its rhythm and flow would enable one to find balance and longevity. Qi itself was sort of separated into fractions that form different elements. The heaviest qi made up solids, and next came liquids, and the most ethereal was the so-called animating breath of life in living beings. This ethereal qi was the stuff that swirled around in your body. According to their beliefs, there are natural patterns of flowing and pooling energy in the body, and any imbalance or blockage of this energy could lead to illness or death. Fascinatingly, yin and yang are also called the greatest of qi. Yin and yang are literal representations of balance. Apparently, balance was a huge part of the vital spark in Chinese culture.
Now, the Enlightenment era was huge in redefining life as we know it, both in general and with the actual definition. Vitalism as a philosophy exploded during this time period. It was mostly influenced by Christian and Greco-Roman beliefs, which had resurfaced during the Renaissance and became this completely new ideal. And what's really amazing is all 3 of these aspects, Christianity, classicalism, and then the modern beliefs in vitalism, all came together in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Frankenstein was written by Mary Shelley and published in 1818 at the end of the Enlightenment era. It's said that Mary Shelley's book, one of the first horror science fiction novels ever, kick-started the modern science fiction genre, as well as the horror genre, and has of course been featured in remakes ever since.
Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
What's hilarious about Frankenstein is that in today's culture, people believe the whole point is warning people not to play God. Victor Frankenstein tried to create life, and it turned into a monster. And that should warn the rest of us not to try and obtain that power for giving life. But if you examine it more closely, that really isn't the case. In fact, it's really a story about empowering humanity as a whole. All you have to do is look past the obvious.
Why has vitalism been so prevalent in all these cultures and religions, and still is to some extent in modern day? What question does it try to answer? Well, vitalism, like most all philosophies, is a theory of existence. It tries to answer the question that everyone wants to understand. Why are we alive? The answer vitalism gives us is simple. It separates the living from the non-living by using a vital spark, or presenting us with some mystical energy that has organized the universe for us. Humans in almost every culture are either the only ones with a spark, or they have a special form of it. We, as a species, crave feeling special. Why have we built all these amazing things, have empires that have risen and fallen, and can even ponder the nature of our existence? What has elevated us to think beyond our base primal needs? The answer, an answer we all love to hear, is vitalism. We have a special spark inside us all. It's why we're alive, it's why we're not like everything else on the planet, and how different cultures answer that is the key to understanding them.
It's interesting. Really, in Greco-Roman mythology, humanity was shaped in the image of the gods. We were sculpted by Prometheus to look like the gods, and naturally would mean we'd act like the gods. But the gods in Greek and Roman myths aren't these amazing, omnipotent beings that knows what's best for everyone. The Greeks and Romans came up with the very human gods. Gods that ravished and pillaged and demanded sacrifices, but could also be kind and merciful and beautiful and wise. The gods themselves were humans, and humanity was given life from these gods. Then they, naturally, would be human too. Think about it. The Greco-Roman culture was a magnificent culture. It spanned across the globe, and the Romans ruled for longer than any other culture in the history of the world. They were an incredibly powerful, influential group of people that left their baser human instincts show. They could be cruel and murderous and hedonistic, yet had the capacity for love and art and infrastructure. It was very human culture. And surprisingly, the gods that gave them life were a rather human bunch as well.
Even more fascinating is the Greco-Roman philosophical definition of life. Ancient classical philosophy originated in Athens, the birthplace of the world's first democratic government and home to many of the ancient world's philosophers. In Athens, logic, intelligence, and the ability to pass impartial judgment upon one's fellows were the most valued traits an individual could have.
And understanding this, it makes perfect sense the highest form of pneuma would be the so-called rational soul. Rationality in this culture was their highest value, and that's reflected in their definition of life.
Well, you see, ancient Chinese philosophy is all balance and flow. Remember the pooling and flowing qi in your body? With a well-integrated willpower, it was believed you could control that flow of qi and achieve perfect balance and longevity, as well as a deeper understanding of the universe. And if you really look at the Chinese value, and really any Asian culture influenced by theirs too, there's a direct correlation. The Chinese value longevity, so they value their elders. They value balance and wisdom, and that's what qi can help you achieve. And of course, they value hard work to attain all these things, which translates to a strong willpower to control your flow of qi.
The thing about the Enlightenment is that a lot of ideas came from Christian ideology, which in and of itself was influenced by Greco-Roman culture. I mean, think about it. In both Christianity and Greco-Roman mythology, humanity was shaped in the image of the gods, or the one God that created them. They were given life from these deities, and whatever that soul was like was how they supposedly acted. The difference is that Greco-Roman mythology had very human gods and goddesses, and Christianity, well, doesn't. Let's look at Frankenstein again. Here, you have Victor Frankenstein, the man who tried to bring something to life, and the creature he created. Now, according to Christian beliefs, only God can bestow the vital spark of life, and when Victor tried it, the creature turned out to be a monster. But is that really why he turned into a manipulative killer? If you look closely at the text, it's not. The creature himself was honestly more human than a lot of the human characters in the story. When he first comes to life, he's pure-hearted and has the desire to do good in the world. He craves his creator's love and affection, and all he wants to do is learn about and admire the beauty and the good things in the world. It isn't until Victor scorns the creature, along with the rest of humanity, that he turns cruel and monstrous.
And therein lies the purpose of the soul in Christianity. The Christian God is a being of immense power and perfection, and naturally, anyone with a soul bestowed by this God would strive for power and perfection as well. But the creature in Frankenstein was given his soul from a human source, and that made him human in nature. Just like in Greco-Roman culture, the creature had the potential for good, but was warped into something evil by those striving towards perfection and control. He was seen as inhuman, despite being the most human of anyone in the novel. And the dangerous strive for perfection and control and destruction of things not understood is what destroyed the creature in the end.
It really wasn't until the Renaissance, and then later the Enlightenment, when people began to question this complete control the church had over everything. The church itself was like God in a way, immensely powerful, and believed to be this perfect guiding force. But then people began unearthing the pagan religions and questioning the purpose of their path. And as education and knowledge of these other cultures grew, so did the questioning of those in power. It was during the Enlightenment when people began viewing the world in a more imperfect human way than they had before. And the definition of vitalism during that time changed because of it.
Though all these different cultures have their own interpretations of what it means to be human, they still share some traits. The vital spark in humans can provide rational thought, the ability to judge, the knowledge of right and wrong, an understanding of the world, complex thoughts, emotions, and balance. But no matter their differences, there is one constant among them all. What a culture values in its people is also what the vital spark of that culture provides.
At times, its interpretation is at the hands of philosophers and intellectuals. At others, it is redefined by people in power. And still others, the people themselves learn and understand what they believe defines living.
It depends on the time, the place, the culture, the politics, the religion, the science, and the values.
What vitalism means depends on the people.
And understanding vitalism in any culture can lead to an understanding of the culture itself. People define why they're alive, what separates them from the rest of the world, by things they value most, and that itself defines their humanity. If we can grasp that, then maybe, just maybe, understanding any human, culture, or even the universe as a whole isn't that far away after all.